Howdy folks, Todd McCree with Great Escape Farms here. I am with Michael Judd. We are doing a joint video here, so this is going to go up on both of our channels. And this is a hardy kiwi right here. Actually, it's two of them. It's a male and a female, and Michael is going to tell us about this.
It's the entrance to our garden. Check out these hardy kiwis, sometimes called kiwi berry. They're smooth skinned. You just pop the whole thing in your mouth. They're absolutely delicious. They're totally a kiwi without some of that acidity. So they're absolutely delicious. They harvest later in the fall, usually later September, early October for us. And you want to wait until they get really sort of wrinkly and soft. That's when they're their perfect state. And that's probably one of the reasons you don't see them so much in the grocery stores, is because they really need to be at that super ripe, soft stage. That said,
now one of the questions I get at farmers markets is, where's the fuzz? When does that come on?
There's no fuzz, no fuzz. I always say these are a cousin to the fuzzy, but they're smooth skinned. And I say, just pop the whole thing in your mouth. Eat them till you get a sugar belly. They are so good and so productive. So this is one male and one female, and typically you definitely need a male for up to 7 females in the same area. And one female, if it's super happy, can produce up to 100 pounds of fruit. So you want to build strong for these. I always say, think of wisteria with 100 pounds of fruit on it, right? Because the weight is going to be strong. So here I'm building these arbors with black locusts. You could use eastern cedar or something that's really strong and going to hold that weight over a long period of time. And then you can cut back your kiwis. It's actually good to cut back your kiwis in the wintertime, to 18 to 24 inches, really shorten it back because it will regrow. Don't worry. It's quite vigorous that way. And you can also do summer pruning if you want. The more pruning you do, the more fruit you'll get because it'll return the energy into the fruit versus constantly growing itself. It's kind of like figs in that way. I cut my figs back because I don't want all of the energy going into the bush. I want it to go into the fruit. So same, but I do nothing with this, to be honest. I do late winter pruning. I do cut back, but I don't do the summer pruning, and I get so much fruit, I'm not worried about it. So you can organize and plan for training your hardy kiwis like you would a grape, or you can kind of let it go wild and become a really nice covered arbor space, and you'll still get tons of fruit. These are wonderful. To get them started, you definitely want them to be in a good drainage. They need good drainage to start. Ideally full sun. They'll take some partial shade. Whenever you get into partial shade, you're going to get partial fruit. But they will grow in partial shade. Be careful. They will run. If you plant them along your fence line, they might crawl over your neighbor's house. They really do get vigorous. So plan ahead for these guys. Make sure they have really good support.
And what is your soil type like here?
Our soil here is like a clay. We're slightly acidic. But I'm not in a low point here. So I definitely, if I had a heavier, wetter spot, I would probably create a mound and I would plant my hardy kiwis on that mound so that they got a lift, weren't in that deep, wetter soil.
And you were showing me earlier about the vines coming up here. So this is a vining plant, and that is the vine right there. It's as big around as my arm.
So these trunks I trained initially with a piece of bamboo to bring them up, and I had to trim away all of the side shoots that wanted to come along until I got it to the height of the top of the arbor here. And then I started spreading out the main cordons, the main arms for each one. But then it kind of took over on its own, and I haven't maintained that pattern, though you could for more organized fruiting. And you can also cut your male back pretty dramatically after it flowers. Right? Because it's the female that's giving you all the fruit. So after your male flowers, you can cut it back dramatically and give over more of that space for your female to fruit on. So, yeah.
And you were telling me earlier that you have another type of kiwi that is trellised a little different?
Yes. So there's a Japanese hardy kiwi. It's called Asai. And it's purportedly self-fertile. It's hard for me to tell because I have so many kiwis growing. But it is quick to fruit. I have noticed that within 2 or 3 years, it's fruiting. Whereas sometimes with some of your male and female combinations, it could be 8 years until you get fruit, all right? It varies in your climate and your space, but don't be surprised. A lot of people ask me, I haven't gotten any fruit yet. And I'm like, well, it could be 7 or 8 years. You have to wait. But the Asai which is only good to probably about zone 6, and warmer. So it's not going to go be one of your more cold hardy kiwis. We're zone 6B, moving into zone 7A here, and our acai is doing really well, but it's not exposed out to the elements.
Okay, we have moved over, and this is Michael's Asian, I believe he said Japanese kiwi.
Yeah.
And he's going to tell us a little bit more about this, about how he planted it, show us this arbor he has up here, some of the mulch that he has down here. So I'll turn it over to Michael.
Yeah, this is the acai, I-S-A-I-I, hardy kiwi. Very unique, very vigorous, and very productive. This is only about 3 years old, and look, it's absolutely loaded with fruits. They look a little bit smaller than some of the other hardy kiwis, but look at the number of fruits on this thing. And this is a very young hardy kiwi. I mean, it's absolutely loaded. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds. I mean, there's probably thousands on this little space.
I am sorry to interrupt, but now I have to ask, what do you do with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of kiwi?
Invite your friends over.
There we go.
Make wine. I make wine out of a lot of my extra fruit, because when you get a lot of fruit like we do, fermenting it is an easy way, or freezing it, but fermenting it into wines is really good.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have a few recipes in your book, Edible Landscaping with a Permaculture Twist.
That's
correct?
Right. I've got recipes, fun recipes for cocktails, for wines, for meads, whatever gets you to get out there and harvest. Because I found, it's easy to get excited and plant stuff, but then when it's hot and you're like, oh, it's time to harvest, not everyone's eager to go out, but I'm like, hey, if it's for a cocktail, you're probably going to get out there and harvest it, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's a good wine, you're not going to miss it. So this is kind of something I just made up, an edible landscape architecture. This is black locust, very rot resistant. We have a lot of it in our woods. So I just put in this post. I probably put it about good 20 inches deep in the ground. So it's because this kiwi is going to get bigger and hardier and heavier. And then I just went up top and I took some old scaffolding braces, and I cut into the top of the black locust and fitted it in there and sort of braced that down, because again, you're going to get heavy weight. You want to plan for heavy weight, and I think part of my daydream was that it would be a seating area, but I think I probably would need to bring it out a little bit more, like a strong umbrella, and then it could be a little arbor space, because we're right here by the pool, so it's nice to put your fruits, and I call these snack fruits, where you are hanging out, where you're frequenting, because out of sight's out of mind, and that's good for some things. But when, like you say, Todd, what are you going to do with all this fruit? Ideally, if everyone's hanging out and there's a fruit and you're right here by the pool, they're going to get eaten. If you had it down out of the sight, it's going to be for the birds. So, put your fruits where you frequent, put them on your pathways.
You say this is how old now?
3 years old. I probably planted it 2 years ago, and it was probably only about a year old.
And just to give you an idea of how
at most I would say 4 years old from a cutting.
Maybe about 2 fingers worth here.
So it's precocious. For hardy kiwis, it's precocious, and it's in a happy spot. It's facing south. It's not exposed to northern winds. I have found with hardy kiwis, when they're young, and if you're especially in a cold climate or you have a fluctuating hot cold winter spring, that you can put like foam pipe, that you put on a pipe. You put on the foam to keep the pipes usually insulated. You can put that on your young hardy kiwi to help protect the young trunk as it grows. Otherwise, they can sort of go through that expansion contraction and they can die in their early years. They can be a little sensitive in their early years. So some people really recommend making sure that your plants are actually 2 or 3 years old before you plant them. Because if you plant a very small hardy kiwi, especially if you're in a bit of a northern climate, they might die off. So get them a little stronger, get them hardy, put some of that foam pipe on them, to help through those first couple winters. Make sure they drain, and you should be off and absolutely loaded with hardy kiwis in no time at all.
Yeah. So Michael, you and I know each other have for a while, and we take a lot for granted because we know each other's experience, but I'm sure others will have questions. So how can they get a hold of you if they have questions?
Well, the YouTube, ask questions on the YouTube channel. That's probably one of the easiest things. I have courses, I have books, I've done a lot to get my knowledge out there. So you can interact with me, virtually, through some of my courses, my website, my books jump into a lot of these details. I've got free webinars on a lot of my favorite fruits and other ways to do these things. So, My life journey now is to get all that I know out there so that it can be easily accessed all the time, versus necessarily being, one-on-one. So look for my material. You'll learn a lot. And then, yeah, send me pictures. Let me know what you're doing. I'd love to see it.
Well, we thank you very much for giving back and giving so much to the community. We will include links in the show notes to his books, his YouTube channel, and his website. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you very much, viewers, and I hope you have a wonderful day.